Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to another GameMaker tutorial. This is part 26, and in this episode, I'm going to show you guys how you can load the game that we learned how to save in the previous episode. So let's get started. I do also want to mention that if you go to my website, hopefully it's loading faster. This morning I had an issue where it took forever to load, but if you go to my website, you can sign up for a free GameMaker course if you sign up for my mailing list. And then I have other courses and stuff too. So check it out. There's a link in the description. So the first thing that we need to realize with saving and loading the game is that the tricky part isn't loading in the information. The tricky part is deciding how and when you use that information. So there's actually three main cases or scenarios that we need to worry about. One of them is when we pause the game. I'm actually going to run this. So I'll run the game and show you here. So one of the scenarios we need to worry about is when you pause the game and then you just return back. Okay? That's the return scenario. The other scenario is when we go into a new room. So if we come over here and we go into a new room, that's a scenario. These scenarios, by the way, they will all be inside of a room start event. So this is when the room actually starts. Okay, so we've got going into a new room. That starts a room, so that's a scenario. And then lastly, we have loading a room. And that is a specific scenario as well. So we're going to create three macros for these three different scenarios. So I'm going to come down into macros and go to default. And I'm going to create one that's called return. We're going to set it to 0. One that's called new room. I'm going to set that to 1. And then last I'm going to name one load. And we're going to set that to 2. Okay, so we've created these macros. And when we start the game, we're going to actually switch and determine which one we should be using. So go into the player's stats object, because that's what we're going to use for this object, player stats. Okay, and we're going to go into its create event, and we're going to initialize some information in here that we need to save in order to load the game, or that we need to access. So the first thing that we're going to save is we're going to save the previous, well, we've already got that. We're already saving the previous room. So save the previous room. Okay, another thing we need to save is the player's X start position, because this loading and saving system is going to work similar to Zelda, where if you save inside of a room and then you reload the room, it's going to put you back where you were when you very first started the room. And the reason I'm doing that is to prevent glitches where you could get stuck inside of an enemy or in a wall or something. If it was, well, basically stuck inside of an enemy. You could kill the enemy, save right where it started out, and then you'd both be there. It's not a super big deal, but that's the way I've decided to do it. So we're saving the room start, the player's start position. So player, let's see, get the player's X start and Y start. So because this is the create event for this object, we can just do player X start equals object player.x, player Y start equals object player.y. Now if the player object doesn't exist, you'll get an error message. So if you want, you can do a check first. If instance exists, object player, then we'll get these like this. Else, we'll just initialize those as 0. Player X start equals 0. Player Y start equals 0. Okay? Now we're going to create a variable that will keep track. Remember our three cases? Whether we're going to return, whether we're going to load, or whether we're going to start a new room. We're going to create a variable that will store that. So we're going to call that room start action, because those are the 3 actions. We're going to save it. We're going to set it to new room for now. Okay? So now that you've got that done in the player's stats, what we're going to do is we're going to create a script for loading the game. So right click on scripts, do create. That was the wrong button. Right click on scripts, do create script, and I'm going to name this script load game. Okay? Now, let me pull up my reference here. Inside of this script, we're going to do a lot of stuff, actually. So this is probably going to be a more difficult part for this. So what we're going to do is var file equals file text open read. So we're going to read the save file, working directory right there, plus save.txt. And then we're going to say var save string, because it's going to come in as a string, is going to be equal to file text read string, and then file. So this is just going to get the entire file as a string. And then what we're going to do is we're going to close the file after we're done. Text close, because we already have the file. We already have the contents of the file stored in save string now, so we can just close it. Then we need to convert, because remember we encoded it using a JSON, or we used a base 64 encode, so we need to decode it. So we're going to do save string equals base 64 decode save string. Okay, so now we have it as a JSON file again. Remember, when we saved the game, we saved it as a JSON and then we encoded it. Now we're decoding it and it's a JSON, so we need to turn it from a JSON into an actual data structure. So we're going to say var save data is equal to JSON decode save string. Okay, we're done with save string. We don't need to use that variable anymore. So now we're going to say var save room equals save underscore data room. Okay, so this right here, save data, is now a DS map, and because of that we can use this accessor to get the room. So now we're loading in the room from our save data. Then we're going to say if room does not equal save room. So basically, if we're not already in this room, go to save room, which is right here. So if we're not already in the saved room, we'll go to that room. Now we need to modify the player's stats. So with object player stats, so we're going to say player underscore x start equals save data accessor x. Player y start equals save data accessor y, like that. If instance exists, object player, make sure the player's in the room. Object player dot x equals player x start. Object player dot y equals player y start. Object player dot physics position x equals player x start. You need to set both the player's x position and the physics x position, which will be the fixture attached to it. I'm pretty sure. This works. I don't know if you absolutely have to do this, but I think you do, and it works, so why not? Physics position y equals player y start. These videos are they're not so beginnerish anymore, honestly. Instance create, that's okay. We've learned a lot along the way. player X start, player Y start. I really feel strongly that we needed to show you how to save and load, because if you can't save and load, it's not really an RPG anymore. Okay, so if the player doesn't exist, we'll just create it. Now we need to set other properties like HP equals save data HP. This is all the information that we saved in the last one, right? Max HP equals save data max HP. Stamina equals save data stamina. Max stamina equals save data max stamina. And we're just going to go through each one of these. Move this up a little over here so I'm not in the way. Experience equals save data experience. Max experience equals save data max experience. And level equals save data level. We're almost done here. Attack equals save data attack. Okay, this is what we need to do to load. And then lastly, DS map destroy save data, because we don't need the DS map anymore. Want to get rid of it. Okay, so our load function should work now. We should be able to load the game. Now let's go back into our cases. Remember, we've got the 3 cases. So go into the player stats object again. We're going to add an event. It's going to be a room start event. Room start. Drag over a code action. And this is where we're going to handle the room start action. Remember the player's start position. And we're going to do if room is equal to room pause exit. So you're going to have one of these for every single room that is not an actual level. So if you have a menu or something like that, well, basically every room that's not a level that the player stats object is in. And so menus you might not have to worry about because you won't have the player stats object there. But we do have the player stats object in the pause room, and we want to make sure it doesn't run this code in the pause room. So we're just going to exit. So we're going to do a switch statement on the room start action. We're going to say case return. Now for the return, we just do break. We don't do anything. It's nice. So then we're going to do case new room. New room. Now on the new room case, we just need to make sure we get the player's X start and XY position. So this is also going to be the default case. So you can do that. You can do actually do 2 cases that run the same code, and you just line them up like this. So we're doing case 1 and the default case. And we're going to say player X start equals object player.x. And player Y start equals object player.y. You want to make sure the player exists though. If instance exists, object player. We just double check to make sure that the player exists. Okay, and then we're going to break. Okay, now we're going to do case load game or load. And we're going to call script load game because we wrote that nice script so we don't have to do a whole bunch of that stuff in here. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to set the room persistence equals false and room start action equals -1. Basically, we're just saying reset the room start action. We also need to check the step event for the object player stats and do some little updates in here. So come into the object player stats step event. And we need to change how the pause game works just a little bit here. So currently we're getting the previous room, but we also need to turn room persistent on. So room persistent equals true when we pause. Okay? And then when inside of our else, so first of all, and so then inside of our else statement right here, we also need to set the room start action. Because we're pausing, we want to set it to return. Okay? Okay, we're getting close. There should be only a couple things left. First, we need to go into the player and then go into the player's room start. We need to change this real quick. So player room start. And we need to set persistent equal to true because we're going to actually turn off the player's persistent. So persistent equals true on room start. And the reason our persistent information is going to get a little bit crazy, and the reason is because we need to turn on and off the persistent to make sure that loading works, because you could potentially load multiple players into your room if you're not careful with how your persistent works. So this is the logic behind this is a little bit tricky to follow. And I actually spent quite a bit of time debugging it. So open up your pause menu. Okay, so we need to edit the step event for the pause menu. So come in to step event for the pause menu. And all we should need to change is our other cases here, right? So we've got save game right here. Case number 2 is to load the game. So let's load the game here. We're going to say object player stats dot room start action equals, and now this is convenient because let's just do load here. Equals load, and then we're going to do room go to object player stats dot previous room. Okay, so now when we go back to the previous room, it will know that it needs to load the game. So let's run this and see if it works. Because that's a lot of stuff to write. And there's a lot of places that this can go wrong. So make sure you're following along careful. So let's pause the game and we'll save. Game is saved. Return. And I'm going to go into this room over here and try and load the game. Load game. Okay, so we got an error message. Let's see what it says. File is not opened for reading file. Oh, it's because we named it my save game. That's why. Okay, so this is just save, but it should be, for our load, it should be my save game. That might have been obvious to you guys, but in my reference, I actually used the other one, and so that's why it was confusing for me. Okay, but this gives us a good example. We can try loading. Load. There we go. Okay, but that didn't work. Okay, I remember. We need to modify our save script just a little bit, because currently we're just saving the player's X and Y position as 0 and 0. So what we need to do is make sure and save this to player X start and this one to player Y start. Because saving those to 0 and 0 is not right. Save the game, run it again. Let's see what happens here. Okay, we'll need to save again. Game saved. Okay, return. Should be able to load now. And there we go, back at the start of this level. So let's go into our second level and make sure it works across rooms. So I'm going to come into here and do load. Boom, back at the start of this level. Okay, that looks like it's working. Saving and loading is working. Let's kill some enemies and level up and then save again real quick. So attack these slimes. Okay, so we leveled up. Let's save. Well, let's return and then let's save. Game saved. Okay, return. Let's load. Okay, so it's loading right there. So for some reason, we're storing the player's start position even on just a return, and it shouldn't be doing that. Game saved, return. But you can see that we've saved the we've saved our level. Okay, so the problem is that we're only setting the room start action to return when we use the pause key to unpause. So just copy this, come into the player stats object and cut this out with Control X right here. And we're just going to put that on the return. That's a better place for it anyways. Go into the pause menu, the step event here, and then put it here. When we do return, just set the object player stats dot room start action equals return. That it makes more sense to put it there anyways. That way we should always set to the correct one. Now go into the player stats and the room start event and make sure that at the end here, room start action, make sure that that's set to new room. So it's going to do new room by default, and then this can still be default here. Yours probably already shows default. So let's save, try this again here. So I'm actually going to load the game and save right here. Return. Let's load. That looks good. Return. Save. Load. And we came back to the start. So it should be working now. We should be able to return. Fight these enemies. We could level up again, but it'll take too long. So I'm going to come back. And the room start case works where we go to new rooms. The loading works where if we load, it takes us back to the start of the room that we were in. And the returning works. We can return back. Nice. So it should be working. This video is definitely a little bit more complicated. So try and help each other out in the comments. You'll just need to make sure of a few things. Make sure your player object is marked as persistent. Make sure that your player stats object is also persistent and that it also exists inside of your pause menu. And then after you've done that and created your macros and your save and load scripts look just like mine, then you should be able to follow along and just go over each step of this video. I'm going to edit it to try and make it as clear as possible, even with the little fixes that I did at the end. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hopefully you can get saving and loading working in your game, even though it's a little bit complicated the way we've chosen to do it here. If you enjoyed this video, be sure and like it and leave a comment. Share it on Facebook and Twitter, and I will talk to you guys later.